Welcome back. I am your host, Dr. Derek A. Reeves, and you have just joined me for Moments of Reflection. I want to, first of all, thank my team. They've been really working with me. I've been cleaning out one office and establishing various other recording studios at my home and in several portions of my library. And so we hope to be back on schedule very soon. Perhaps before the end of September, we will resume our schedule of recording and bring back to you those programs that we have previously aired. I want to talk about today the concept of God as the first existence, or the first existing one. The Latins call the first existence the primus quod, the primus quod. And what it symbolizes is that God then is the first ever existing entity or phenomenon. And when we think about God as the first or the first being, we have to consider that his existence and his essence and his substance then, because he is the first and according to Scripture, he has no beginning and has no ending, then we have to kind of move beyond the human experience, because in our human experience, we always consider that someone or something that is living has to have had some type of beginning or something to begin it. But when we speak of God as an immaterial being, and we speak of him as being God, we have to consider the fact that if he is the first being, the first existence, then it stands to reason that he needs no existing source that causes him to be. When we talk about God as the primus quod, there are several types of what we call self-existence. The first self-existence is an impossibility for anyone because it simply means that something has brought itself into existence. And we understand philosophically, logically, that that is an impossibility because to order or to influence your existence or to somehow cause something to happen to your being, you must exist in order to do so. And so that type of self-existence is off the table. The second type of self-existence deals with the fundamental reality that God has always been, and that because he has life within himself, there's nothing outside of him that can sustain him or cause him to consistently exist. And so God as the primus quod, he then would be someone who is, first of all knowing. He would set the course and the stage of what knowledge is. He would also be the primary mover of all things. And when we talk about the primary mover or the first mover, we talk about one who is setting things into motion and causing them to exist in such a way that they now have an ordered, structured purpose. And so God is the primus quod. He would be the example of knowledge, the example of law, the example of truth. He would be the beginner, the sustainer, and also the designer of all things. So when we speak of God then, we have to understand that he is not like any other being in existence. And because he's not like any other being in existence, we can only know him in relation to how he exposes himself to us. And even if God was to speak about all that he is, our knowledge, our limited knowledge, and our limited capacity to understand the infinite and to understand eternal things, we could not begin to comprehend how he is, and how it is he never had a beginning, and how he will never have an end. And so God as the primus quod, He is the orchestrator of all things. He is the originator of all things. He is transcendent of time and space, and yet he feels time and space, and time and space are not a part of his being. He is not like a pantheistic God, but he is a creator God who caused all things to be, and at the same time, he produced it outside of himself, even creating space and time and the space and time continuum. And so when we talk about the primus quod, the first existence, we have to understand then that this creator God is omnius. In other words, he is absolute in all of his characteristics. He's absolute holiness, absolute light, where the scripture says, in him there is no darkness. He is absolute in knowledge, absolute in kindness, absolute in love, absolute power, absolute divinity. And so he's omnius, but at the same time, omnipotent, omniscient, and he is eternal. And so, in reflecting on the primus quod, God then is the substance that produced all substance. He is the power that released power, that even began to define what we call the quantum fields of energy. And so he is the originator of all things. Before him, there was nothing. And that's why the scripture says, in the beginning, God. It makes us to understand that when all things began, God was already in existence. And one of the fundamental proofs of the primus quod is that we see the fingerprint of God in all things. We see the fingerprint of it pristine, superintelligent designer. All things that operate within a system have been systematized by he who created the system. And that's why the universe, even our bodies, and all existence operates fundamentally with systemic principles and systemic particles that know how to work together. It is a design. It is a complicated system that orchestrates and maneuvers and operates within a modality to achieve a specific purpose that is ordered by the first mover, the creator, who is God. And that's why the scripture says, the very heavens declare his glory. If we really want to know God, all we have to do is look at creation. And in truth, all we really have to do is look at ourselves and see how we are wonderfully made and how even ourselves know how to complement and work as a systemic whole within our bodies. I thank you for joining me, and we have discussed the primus quod, the first existence, who is God. Thank you again for joining me with Moments of Reflection. I am your host, Dr. Derek A. Reeves, and until next time, be blessed. Jesus is coming back again, and God still reigns.